Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the second half of our meeting, which is the special council meeting for July 20th, 2026. We call this meeting to order, as we like to do with all of our meetings, by just acknowledging that we're doing our work on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, specifically recognizing the Lekwungen-speaking people known today as the Kasapsum and the Songhees nations, and their connections to these historic lands and waters continue to this day. First order of business, approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I don't have any mayor's remarks. We had a chance for conversation at the committee of the whole, which preceded this meeting. So with that, we move to committee of the whole recommendations from the meeting held in July, or just prior to this meeting. All of those motions were for receipt and to refer them to this for formally receiving them. And so I think we can we move all four at once, Ms. Anderson? So can I have a motion to move the recommendations from the prior meeting? Moved and seconded. Thank you. I can imagine we'll have any discussion on this one. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. We move to first of the special meeting matters, our 2027 financial planning guidelines. We have Ms. Lockhart, our Director of Finance, here with us to introduce. This is subject to public input, and so following the presentation and questions, we will invite the public to make any comments or questions, and then we'll come back to this table for direction. Welcome, Ms. Lockhart.
Thank you. All right, the purpose of the financial planning guidelines is to set the framework for the 2027 to 2031 financial plan. Staff are seeking approval of the proposed budget schedule as well as the use of the 3% baseline inflationary increase. While the report does not provide an overall property tax percentage increase, it does highlight revenue considerations and significant cost pressures the municipality will be facing. The proposed approach will maintain a focus on long-term financial sustainability while preserving existing service levels. It also supports continued investment in infrastructure renewal and asset management to ensure the district's assets are maintained and replaced in a sustainable manner. Staff will begin the 2027 budget process earlier than in previous years to allow for additional time and a more thorough analysis and review. The new timeline will also ensure Council has sufficient opportunity to guide the budget process and deliberate any new funding requests. There is one other item I would like to mention as well. I understand there has been some questions regarding the $9 million of borrowing mentioned in the report, so I'd like to provide the following clarifications. The borrowing referenced in the report was previously approved as part of the 2025 and 2026 financial plans. The debt servicing payments of $868,820 for the borrowed funds will start in 2027, which is year one of the 15-year term for those borrowings. And the debt will be repaid over a 15-year term with the final payment scheduled for 2041. And with that, I would welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lockhart. Questions for staff? Councillor Watson and then Councillor Appleton.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I'll be first out of the gate here. Yes, we appreciate getting this at this time and for the slight, the proposed changes in the timeline to allow for maybe earlier deliberation in the coming year. I have one question and concern around the timeline. You do mention in the report that the police services provisional budget is expected in November, and sorry, I'm confused because I've still got the Heritage Commission's item in my package here, and I'm looking for your oh no. Well, anyway, I'm getting distracted by a machine. I can't find what I'm looking for. But yes, so that the timeline in your report doesn't actually then reference that again, although I see it as a significant item in the budget process. And I just wondered if you could comment on, in the event that provision, or if that just on actually the legislative requirements for when that provisional budget needs to come to us, and what the process would be and what the timelines would be statutorily if council wanted to have a discussion or raise questions about the budget or send it back to the Police Services Board for review if we had considerations we'd like them to look at.
Ms. Lockhart?
Yes, thank you. Through the Mayor. So to answer your question, the legislative requirements underneath the Police Act, at Section 27, state that on or before November 30th of each year, a municipal police board must prepare and submit to council for its approval a provisional budget for the following year to provide policing and law enforcement in the municipality. And so this is something we can certainly put into that schedule. And we are even thinking of having the schedule posted on the website. There is a budget website that we can probably add to and create more transparency. So happy to do that. The other thing we could probably add to that as well is the utility rates. That's something that was also missing from that. Now, for your second question, you're asking about the legislation in terms of when can you make changes. So the section 27, I guess it would be part 2, it says any changes to the provisional budget underneath subsection 1, which I would have read before, must be submitted to council on or before March 1st of the year to which the provisional budget relates. And so this is where we as internal staff would probably logistically have to figure out what this actually looks like with the police board. And, I guess provide you with some timelines around that, and that could certainly be baked into that schedule.
Yeah, thank you. Just my comment would be, I think that would be really helpful. It's a major component of our budget, and it sort of is kind of, that sort of what would need to happen and when it would have to happen by. I think it's important for council to understand and for the public to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If you don't mind, I'll just give a little bit of context. I sit as chair of the police board, so I don't vote on the budget there, but I manage the process. So correct that the provisional budget has to be submitted to council by the end of November. Council considers that basically and has an opportunity at that point to provide either to say, okay, we accept this, or provide feedback back to the police board saying we don't like this, or is there any way you can sharpen your pencil on this, or whatever that piece is. And then ultimately, the police board has to come back with, well, here's our final kind of submission by the end of March. The intention of that process is to ensure that there's an opportunity for a bit of back and forth. So if there's specific questions or concerns or things of that nature, the police board has a chance to consider that in their meetings between November and March, do their work, look at options, and bring back perhaps some potential changes or options or justification to the council for that. That is the final submission. Ultimately, council may not approve that as part of their budgeting process, but there is an appeal process that the police board has option to go to the province and make a case to them directly about the rationale for the need, generally related to meeting police standards is usually the primary directive of that nature. It's not a process we've had to follow in Oak Bay, but it's certainly not foreign to most councils and police boards over the years. The intention there is an iterative back and forth to make sure that concerns of the council are reflected in the police budget. So that's the intent. Maybe that's a bit more context in the timeline, but I hope that helps a little bit, Councillor Watson.
Yes, and I just really wanted to confirm, and even asking these questions, that between the 30th of November and the 1st, I think Ms. Lockhart said the 1st of March, there actually is, given the police board's schedule, enough time for these discussions or back and forths to occur, and that's kind of that there is room enough to do that. This really was my primary concern.
Yeah, I'll say, that there has to be, because that's the legislative requirements of doing it. But the police board does continue to meet. I think that the trickier part here in an election year is people get elected in October, get sworn in November, and then pretty much the first order of business is to consider a police budget before the end of the month by statutory requirements. So it's a bit trickier this year, but the police board meets October, November, December, January, February, March, so and have the ability to do special meetings in between if necessary. So I would anticipate, yes, there would be some opportunity. Sorry, I have Councillor Appleton next.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I wanted to ask a quick question just with regards to grant funding under revenue considerations and just with the uncertainty around LG CAP. There's commentary here with respect to the climate planner position and being driven by that funding. And so it's my understanding, just for clarification, that position wasn't hired on term. That position is an ongoing position. And so in which case it's not it's essentially council would, given that, so I'm just confirming that, confirming that fact, and then given that, how would the position roll over, if you will, in the absence of LGCAP funding be considered at a 5-year financial plan or at the financial plan debate level?
Just before I get answer that question, we're wandering dangerously close to some identifiable staff positions in a public forum here. Yeah, I'm just a little bit nervous about asking the question here. I mean, we can certainly talk to you in general terms. This is a planning document, so you could, if staff can maybe take that question, talk about it more in general terms. How do we manage situations where there are staff or term positions and we're using external funding sources? How we manage that in the planning process? If you don't mind, Councillor Appleton.
Through the mayor, I think if we're talking in general terms, and let's say we're not even talking about a person, and we know that the funding is no longer going to be there, what my recommendation would be is that staff bring that resource request forward in the financial planning process, and it becomes part of the package, I guess, that council would see, and so we would outline very clearly, what it is that we're looking for. And we would have to have a discussion, I guess, you guys would have to approve it if that's something that you wanted to continue with, so.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate the clarification on that. I was not meaning to, ask an untoward question, and I guess I would then just take the opportunity to say, I guess, to somewhat editorialize and just express my support for the LGCAP funding, and the uncertainty around that, the ongoing availability of that funding at the local government level has, brings me concern, and it has been an impactful grant program. And as we look forward, not specifically with this grant, but with all different types of grants and the impact that a potential withdrawal would have, I think it's important for the public to understand that these are impactful grants driving decision-making at our level that we have essentially no control over. So I think it's important for folks to understand that. So in the context of financial planning guidelines, and in my time on council, having rolled out several different large-scale grant programs and being concerned about those being available in the future, I'm glad that this is being specifically identified. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? More questions at this point, I suppose. Don't see any. Oh, Councillor Braithwaite, my apologies.
That's okay, Mayor. Thank you very much. Going on the police budget again, because we have such a significant increase that's being anticipated for that for the police department. I'm wondering if staff has estimated what percentage tax increase that could represent before council receives the police board budget. Is that a possibility, or?
I'm not sure that staff are ready for that particular question at this point, but
Okay.
Ms.
Yeah,
Lockhart?
through the mayor, I don't have those numbers right now,
Okay.
so, yeah.
No worries, thank you. And then on the debt servicing, I know that the report identified that there was, I think it was a 1.97 percentage tax increase associated with debt servicing. And I'm wondering if that's already assumed within the 3% baseline, or is that in addition to the 3% baseline?
Ms. Lockhart?
Through the mayor, that would be in addition to the 3% baseline.
Okay, and then are we also, will staff also continue to recommend the dedicated 2% infrastructure contribution, or would we be looking at alternative approaches for that?
Through the mayor, yes, we would also be recommending that as well.
Okay.
Ms. Hunt wanted to add one context to that. Please go ahead, Ms. Hunt.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, council passed a policy decision a number of years ago for the 2% infrastructure renewal levy, and I can't remember what year we're in, but I know that hasn't completed yet, so we would be bringing that forward, and it would be a decision of council whether or not to continue with that. But yes, staff would be following council's previous direction in that regard.
Thank you. And then I just was looking for some clarification around a sentence that I saw in the report, and it was one-time surpluses will only be used to reduce taxes in rare circumstances. I support that policy because I think it avoids using one-time money to fund ongoing expenses. But I was wondering if staff could provide examples of what they would consider a rare circumstance where using a one-time surplus to offset taxation might be appropriate.
Sure, Ms. Lockhart, I think you've actually done this recently, so, but go ahead.
Yes, through the mayor, I just need a moment to think about this. So,
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that.
that's okay. So I'm just looking at the bullet point, one-time variances resulting in surplus are transferred to reserves to fund future capital liabilities and reduce future revenue requirements, and only be applied to reduce tax rates in rare circumstances where the offset is sustainable and prescribed by the reserve fund bylaw. So what I would probably say here is that we would probably need to, find out, I guess, what the surplus is. And if there is a need, then that would be something where we would bring that forward. I mean, in terms of using one-time surplus, it's, it would have to be a pretty important situation. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know in past municipalities where I've worked, I mean, the one-time surplus is basically allocated to a number of different projects, and, council gets to decide or confirm what those are allocated towards. And so I think, that's probably what I can comment on that. So we'll leave it at that.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
you
that
very
Ms.
much.
Lockhart was not here during, and she just arrived here a few
Yes.
weeks ago, so
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
we're
yeah.
asking
No,
you
I think-
definitely with our past history as well. Go ahead, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I'm really glad Councillor Braithwaite mentioned this, because it would not be prudent to be using one-time funding for ongoing expenditures. Where I've seen it used is when we're phasing in a particular ongoing expenditure, allows the tax increase or the tax impact to be phased in over a number of years versus taking the hit all in one year.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I would say that I thought this was an excellent report. I really did. I thought it was organized and transparent and really realistic about the challenges that we have ahead, which are many. So thank you for the report.
Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question with regards to the financial management strategies listed and the guideline to only use revenue from new development taxation to fund only incremental costs of new development. And I just wondered, is staff not recommending to use a portion of the NTD as a strategy to offset tax increases because our new development taxation has been so minimal to date, let alone predictable? And I'm just wondering, like, with the levels of property tax increases that we're predicting, how could council potentially be supported by staff to have a conversation or explore the benefit of how a portion of the new development tax could help offset property tax increases?
Sure, I'm going to go to Ms. Hunt first on that one, and Ms. Lockhart, if you wish to add.
Yeah, thank you very much. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Smart. It's a very good question, and yeah, historically the district hasn't not had a lot of additional new development tax revenue. In 2026, we did see a significant increase, and with development activity, I imagine that will continue to grow. I think it's very important to recognize that new tax growth comes sometimes from land use that is creating. It comes from land use changes that don't necessarily mean that there's actually new population in the district at that time. And so sometimes it's more prudent to wait until the services are being implemented to match that new revenue with the new expenses. So a good example of that is Carnarvon redevelopment. When that facility comes online, we're going to need to hire more staff, and that is part of that is to service new growth. And so that would be a good time to use that new revenue from taxation to offset the expenses associated with that new facility and the growth that it's providing services for. So a lot of it comes from, on the other hand, there may be tax growth that comes from people, construction that has been finished and there's new units and there are people, now living here. And in those cases, yes, using some of that taxation growth to offset the base budget and the tax increase makes sense. And so there's a bit of analysis I think that staff needs to do as part of the financial planning process to determine what is driving that tax growth so that we can make a recommendation to council.
Thank you for that. Anything you wish to add, Ms. Lockhart?
Nope, through the mayor, I think that's absolutely perfect.
Okay. Councillor Smart, anything else? No. Okay, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I commend staff on this report because I sat in the audience in years when staffing positions was held off to balance budgets, and there was some things like that that happened. So I think the transparency, the clarity, and the consistency on the reporting is greatly improved. One thing that is not in here, because it talks about the drivers of the taxes, but we have enjoyed favorable investment returns in the last couple of years, significantly higher than the district has ever had before, because we didn't have reserve funds, or we actually have some reserve funds. But as we draw them down, that investment income will not be there in the future. And the report talks about increases, but it doesn't talk about decreases to the budget. And so I guess I just throw that out there as something that we'll have to consider going forward, because that has actually been income that we have been able to utilize, and we won't have that. So it's because we're not going negative on this, so I just throw that in there.
Ms. Lockhart?
Through the mayor, yes, I totally agree that wasn't in the report, and we will be doing an analysis in terms of our investments to see where we expect that the interest rates will be coming, and that will happen as part of the financial planning process, so that we don't overestimate what the interest is, or, it's hard to say, I guess, how things will turn out, but we will certainly take that into consideration. Thank you.
Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, thank you. Just to provide a little bit of assurance to council, a lot of the interest is generated by our reserves, and so it will be returned to our reserves. So it wouldn't necessarily have a tax impact, but obviously it will impact the growth of those reserves.
Thank you for that. Don't have any other questions from council. Any members of the public wish to make comments or have questions related to item 5.1, the financial planning guidelines? Looking in the room, looking online, not seeing any hands. I'll come back to this table. The motion here is to direct staff to prepare the financial plan based on the financial planning guidelines here. Moved, seconded, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll just add a comment, I think reflecting what I heard at this table, which is thank you very much for this report. I think it's, we live in challenging times. I think everybody knows that in terms of keeping costs manageable and meeting service levels. But I think this is a helpful stepping process, and hopefully gives that a bit of a constraint framework to work under as we develop the budgeting planning over the next few months. So thank you for this. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. We now move to item 5.2, our Heritage Commission 2025 Annual Report and the 2026-2027 Work Plan. Mr. Bowl is here to present, but I know we have representation from the Commission as well, so please come forward. We may need to grab a second chair there for you. Oh, you got it. Thank you. Mr. Bowl, why don't you provide the introduction, and we'll take questions to you or to the representatives. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The Heritage Commission has prepared a work plan for the remainder of 2026 and early 2027. The work plan is a specific tool for this particular commission, and it allows the commission to work on special projects based on a council-approved and funded work plan. This work plan includes 3 initiatives, and the first one seeks to strengthen the heritage protection framework with the help of a consultant. Staff would work with the commission and a consultant to determine the exact topics, because given the budget, probably not all topics listed in the work plan could be addressed in one go. And the Commission is interested to hear Council's input on that as well. One notable topic that would benefit from Council's input is the Commission's interest in exploring new heritage conservation areas. The second initiative seeks to expand the Heritage Registry by adding properties with heritage value. The Commission intends to combine efforts with the Heritage Foundation, who offers century plaques for homes that are celebrating their 100th anniversary. Letter writing, as well as subsidizing the century plaque, would be a way to find interested owners that are willing to list their home in the register. Staff have noted one concern in the report regarding subsidizing these plaques, as it would create an overlap with the Heritage Foundation's work. Staff recommend leaving that portion out of the efforts to increase register participation. The third initiative aims at building Commission capacity and expertise, and the Commission members are currently pursuing speakers to expand the professional development of the Commission. This concludes my introduction. I'm available for questions. We also have the chair of the commission here, Christy Horseman, as well as member Bronwyn Taylor, if council has any questions for the commission. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Bowl. I think you wanted to speak a little bit to the request from the plaque, or were you just really happy to answer questions at this point?
Happy to answer any questions at this point about the plaques or otherwise.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you for being here. I know you got tucked into this agenda a bit late in the process. You're here at 9:21, but we'll make this a very interesting piece in all the work that you do. Turn to council. And just for the record, there is an opportunity for public input on this agenda item. So if you are interested in speaking, if you're online, I would invite you to raise your hands at this time, and I'll get you at the point where we get to public input. With that, questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, I do have one. It's nice to see your work plan, and I can imagine there's been many hours of discussion around the table and back at people's homes as they put this together. In terms of the initiative to actually deepen the skill set of the commission members and that sort of investment in volunteers, I did wonder if you'd given any consideration to making that investment wider in the community. We're faced with all our boards and commissions of this rolling over use of volunteers, that they get appointments for maybe even 1 year or 2 years or whatever. So an investment that in skilling people up who then, because of our statutory limits, leave within 2 years, doesn't have maybe as lasting an impact as maybe making that investment wider in the community to those people in the community who are interested in the subject area and who then in future want to volunteer to do this. So I just wondered if that had been a discussion point, or if you could give some thought to that.
Yeah,
Ms.
thank
Horstman.
you. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Ms. Horseman, go ahead.
One thing that is on the work plan and something that has been a larger topic of discussion on the committee has been the broader education of the Heritage Committee's responsibilities, the Foundation's responsibilities across the district of Oak Bay. Different ways that we can partner with the Foundation to do that, because that is primarily most of the Foundation's work is more of that community outreach pieces. But one of the pieces that's definitely on the work plan is updating the materials on the Heritage website associated with the Oak Bay website, because we think that there's a lot more information we can share with people in a more digestible way, quite frankly, that people can get acquainted with the work that we do and how they could get involved. But definitely taking some of the work that the speakers do that come in, the presentations, and putting that in a more digestible way on, via content on the website for sure. And that's why we wanted to make sure we added those website updates to the work plan as well. I will note that even though the speakers coming in are really valuable for the commission members, and you mentioned the term, this is for myself, who have been on the commission now for the last almost 3 years. While you're doing the work of the Heritage Commission itself, you're reviewing the applications in front of you, those sessions with consultants or homeowners or actually other council members that come in are extremely valuable in the moment as well.
And just a follow-up question about the materials. I know that there's a webinar series. Is that proprietary information that can only be shared, or it's by subscription just to district staff and or commission members, or is there wider access for that material?
I think anybody that belongs to Heritage BC has those available to them.
Membership in Heritage BC is the issue. Okay, thank you.
And also, the thought's just gone out of my mind. Oh, you mentioned our meetings are public. So if we have speakers and it's advertised, the public can tune in to see our meetings as well. And as far as people just being on the commission for a year or two, our terms are up to 6 years. So education isn't lost all of a sudden.
On that note, on the webinar front, one of the reasons why we are wanting to bring in more speakers as well to educate the commission more broadly and take some of that knowledge and put it into content for the website is because some of the Heritage BC webinars are very dated. We're finding that the information is, 2020, 2017, 2018, and a lot obviously has changed since then. And so it is more helpful, I think, for commission members to have those in-person consultants, or even, like I said, residents come in and speak to us.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks very much, Mayor. When I was looking at the report, I think that probably the biggest policy issue is what the commission wants, that the commission wants to further explore the heritage conservation areas. And then staff specifically noted that that council should provide direction on whether it's interested in exploring HCAs before significant work is undertaken. So I'm wondering, before the commission undertakes that further work on the heritage conservation areas, what level of policy direction would staff be seeking from council?
Mr. Bowl?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I think that could be either more informally as part of this discussion, or if council deems it necessary, you could also, of course, formulate a formal recommendation. It's in that realm. It's one of the ideas, I think, that the Commission is interested in, and that's for that reason included in the current work plan, and the work plan is here for your review. Thanks.
Ms. Horstman?
Yeah, and further to that, I'd like to note that we would love to work, obviously, hand in hand with council. We know we have a limited budget, and a lot of the action items that we've proposed would need consultant dollars, which wouldn't go too far across that list. And so we would love to work on something that we would work on together, that we know that would move forward. And there is a list, obviously, in the staff's report of potential items as well that are up for council discussion, potentially into 2027. And so we'd love to receive feedback, or at least we could be open to amending the work plan to include consultation with council to make sure that we're aligned on those items that do get put in that section 1A, where we would enlist a consultant's help to further any of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you so much. And that actually kind of leads into my next question, which is around staff capacity. And because I know that there's a lot of things that are being looked at being implemented. And I'm wondering how staff, or if staff are comfortable with the proposed, that the proposed work can actually be realistically be completed within what we have as the existing resources.
Mr. Bowl?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. After you, we touch on that in the staff report as well. There's limitations what we can do. That said, where the Commission work plan touches on topics that are also on the Council's long listed list of projects that have heritage aspects as well, a number of them, they're listed in the staff report. What would be helpful for the Commission, and with some consultant money, we could have some preparatory work done for the Commission, and that would then lead into a potential council priority project in the future if council chooses so. So yeah, that kind of shows that there's a limited capacity to support that kind of work, but also an opportunity to do some of the groundwork for those future projects. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I have Councillor Patterson next on my speaking list.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to our guests. Thank you so much for the report and the commentary along with that. And I know certainly, I think for a small community, Oak Bay does have very good heritage programs for a community of this size. I have not been too close to it for a while. So what I would like to get some indication of is, if we looked at our program in comparison with Heritage BC's strategic priorities and their current direction for the heritage sector, how we take that into consideration in how we contemplate and support heritage within this community.
Ms. Horstman?
So I think a few different ways that we look to kind of support and work alongside other heritage programs. Obviously, Heritage BC kind of being that overall umbrella that we look to, and one of the things on our work plan is attending a conference that's supported by Heritage BC every year, where a lot of these like-minded individuals that are passionate about heritage in their communities come together and talk about these things. But a few things and a few areas that stood out to me when doing some research around updating this work plan, because it hasn't been updated actually since I think 2022, was one, to consolidate some of the items, and two, to do some alignment. One is definitely around the updating of some of the policies that we have around, I think, climate readiness and heritage. Definitely, we have to find ways to continue to preserve in, environments where there's more weather systems coming in that could, damage heritage properties. What does it look like? Further to that is, what does it look like, when properties are damaged? How do we update the language and bylaws to help that? As an example, the other area that we wanted to kind of align with is how do we preserve ongoing preservation of heritage properties as they obviously age continually? Again, what does maintenance look like? How we've looked at that bylaw? Does it need updating or amendments? And then also multi-use, right? I think that one of the biggest things we see is as a committee is a building preserved, even if it's preserved in a different use way, is still a building preserved that the community can still enjoy. And so that's something we wanted to make sure that we are continually looking at as part of our work plan. And then another one I think is that has come up a couple times, actually just talking to the community as well, and is listed with Heritage BC, is what happens when a building has actually come to its end of life. What happens when a building is dismantled? How there are community members who would love to, have access to the stonework or the flooring or anything that's of interest of preservation and that could be used in their own projects. And I think that we need to look at, potentially look at, our laws around, or bylaws or as such around that work as well. So those are three areas that we wanted to align with that are mentioned in the work plan in section 1A of the potential areas we could look at again.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to open this up for public input. Anybody in the audience wishes to address item 5.2 on the Heritage Commission annual report and work plan, or online? I did ask if people could raise their hands earlier. I don't see any hands raised online at the moment. So give another second or two for people to come in if they wish, but not seeing likely additional public comments. We have a recommendation here for approval but removal of the portion on subsidizing the pieces. I will just say I tend to agree with the staff recommendation. I think it gets very confusing if we're funding multiple places, and the Heritage Foundation can apply to us for a grant and seek some additional funding to help subsidize those if that's seen as a net benefit, if that's a priority. So just want to give you the opportunity, though, to talk to that request here at this table. Ms. Taylor?
With regards to the foundation funding that, what the municipal grant now goes towards the administration of the foundation, which includes our insurance filing fees, but primarily to be able to still give grants for heritage restoration. And the rest of all our activities has to come out of monies we find somewhere through donations or whatever. But the municipal grant is simply used for homeowner grants and administration now.
That is true. I may get some clarification, because my understanding is they are an independent society, and as such can apply to the municipality for additional grants for specialized purposes. Is that not correct? No? Is that not possible? Sorry, my apologies. That's just my clarification question.
If that's true, we've never been made aware of it.
Ms. If we don't have the answer to the question, I'll leave it there. Maybe we can't, because the special nature of the Heritage Foundation, it's part of our... Sorry, Councillor Appleton, you can speak.
Sorry, Your Worship, just with respect to that, as liaison to the Heritage Foundation, are you talking about the annual community granting process?
No, just the Heritage Foundation is essentially an arm's length society that we provide an annual funding to provide grants, and they manage it on our behalf. But my assumption was, as they are an arm's length third-party society, should they want to have some other grant for, say, a project or something else, it wouldn't be a restriction from them applying to that through our normal granting process. I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong in that their sort of slightly tighter relationship would exclude them from that. I don't know, but Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm not aware of any reason why they could not request additional funding from council, either through the grant and aid process or as part of their annual ongoing grant. They also have access to apply for for other grants from other organizations as well.
Sorry, Ms. Horstman?
Yeah, I think just in respect to the plaques, I think the committee's open to rethinking how they're funded, but we want to definitely preserve the initiative itself. It really does speak directly to that pride of place that we're trying to reinforce as part of the commission's work and as expanding the register. And I think that is something that's really important to the underlying fabric of Oak Bay. So we're, again, open to changing the funding portion if the foundation is available to apply for that. Our understanding was with the foundation this year that they did not get the same amount of grant funding, and therefore we had partnered with them on this initiative for the centennial plaques.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Green?
I'm happy to move the motion to approve.
So
And then as Heritage Liaison, I can speak to it briefly?
Sure. So are you moving the staff recommendation that is well, you have to do them in order, actually, because one of them is to amend and approve. So why don't we have a motion to receive the report for information first?
Motion to receive.
This is the annual report, moved and seconded. Don't usually discuss receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? And then you wish to amend the Heritage Commission work plan by removing the proposal to fund a portion of the heritage plaques under Initiative 2A. Is that was in the staff recommendation? Just want to make sure that we're moving the right thing here.
I'm moving the staff recommendation on that item.
So the next one I would do in that order would be the removal of the funding proposal to fund a portion. So is there a seconder? Okay, thank you. So discussion on that. That's what we've just been discussing. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, I'll just echo some of the previous comments. I think it's a very important project and initiative, but conceptually, to me, it does fit better under the foundation scope of work. So I'm supportive of the staff's recommendation, but just want to mention that I'm also supportive of the initiative.
Sure. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm supportive of what's in front of us, but I will just sort of reiterate actually what Ms. Taylor brought up, which is, having been liaison for a couple of years, the amount of funding provided through the grant and aid process to the Heritage Foundation has sort of decreased it's gradually gone down over the last number of years due to all the demands that we have on our grant and aid process and that, just basically that broad demand. So I guess what I would bring to council's attention, would be potentially a bit of a mental bookmark for next year's grant and aid process or the community granting process when that's considered, to cast our minds collectively backwards to this conversation where I'm in support of that being within the foundation's mandate, but it should be understood that the foundation is receiving funding with a number of other organizations, and as Ms. Taylor notes, has to balance that out with the operation of the foundation as well.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Green?
Thank you. I will say that this commission is a very thoughtful group, and I think they've spent a lot of time and effort on the plan. But I also know that the plaque program was one aspect of growing that register, and I think that was the whole point, that as you grow the register, you educate the community at the same time. And so I would hope, and I agree with Councillor Appleton, that we make a mental note that perhaps the commission and the foundation can have a further discussion about the possibility of partnering if it's possible in terms of process. But having chaired the Heritage Commission myself and been on it as a member, it's really frustrating not to be able to grow heritage the way it should grow. And I think the other goals fall after that, as Ms. Horstman and Ms. Taylor suggested. It's difficult to grow HCA neighborhoods. It's difficult to educate the public on maintenance, on better care. It's difficult to talk about heritage conversions and how they can be multi-purpose when we haven't got a sort of a baseline educational approach. But that also speaks to mentorship and to succession planning for membership. And that has always been an ongoing challenge, I think. This year, we have quite a young group, which I think is great. So we have a succession plan that is active now, and hopefully that will carry on.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Yeah, I don't have much to add to this one. I think I already spoke, but on this in principle, I love the Heritage Block program. I think it has so much potential for getting people excited about heritage and people starting that journey into learning about their houses and the value of the stories that are there. So yeah, if there's some mechanisms there that we can help with that overall process, I think ultimately, ideally, to get people on a path to getting their buildings onto the heritage registration so that we capture those stories more fulsomely for the community, that's a huge plus. I am supportive of this recommendation. I do think that should be funneled in one place, but please don't take that as any way as not it being an incredibly good program and deserving of support. And I'll leave it there. So on that portion of the motion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And the last portion is to approve the amended Heritage Commission work plan with implementation subject to timing, et cetera. That was moved. Seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion on that? I'll just leave it with a comment that you've already heard, which is thank you for all the work that you're doing on this. The work is there. It's hard to get all this work done in the course of a year, and really appreciate this opportunity to hear from you and what you're doing. So keep it up. It's great to see. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking around with us till 9:42. And we'll see you soon. We move to section 6, which is special meeting matters not subject to public input. 6.1 is the council priority projects update to home-based business regulations. We have the engagement results and proposed options. We have Mr. Brown with us here, our senior planner for housing policy. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So we're just loading a presentation here. In acknowledging the time, I will skip over some of the slides that I have. But this is the report.
So in fairness, Mr. Brown, it's 9:43. We're okay for time. Yeah. Don't rush. I think, but we wouldn't have lots of time for questions and perhaps potential directions for change. So
absolutely. And so, yeah, this report and presentation is presentation of the engagement summary and some suggested options for how this project can proceed. So there's a lot of information in your package in the What We Learned reports and the staff report to go over these options. So I am going to briefly go over some highlights of the engagement summary, but really save most time to go over the options. First of all, we definitely need to send a thanks for everyone who participated in our questionnaire and came to our events. Both this round of engagement and in the rounds that we had in 2025 as well. Each round built on each other, and so really the principles and the goals of this time around was to narrow down on some of the details and drill down on some of the questions that we still had to do. And so the questions here highlight confirming kind of what we've heard in previous engagements. So with some decent support for the exploring options to expand home-based businesses. And then the follow-up question is about the tiered systems is our response to build the program out of what we heard last time. And again, with some really great support for the approach that we have. This question here, so the results from question 8 for me are a big picture snapshot, a really good synopsis of what we heard overall. It broke down the business types that were proposed and asked participants which housing types that they are most appropriate in. And for me, this one slide encapsulates the wider story quite well, where we have type 1 businesses, which are like a home office with no extra people, no customers coming to the property, fairly well supported across all housing types. Then in type 2, where you have music lessons, where you could have one customer at a time, still some good support in infill housing, but then diminishing support in townhomes and in apartments. So in those multifamily housing types, more shared walls, you had less support for businesses that have a little bit more impact. And then for type 3 businesses, where as it were proposed, you could allow up to 7 customers at a time. Just over half supporting this business type in infill housing, but not supported in others, and a significant number, nearly 43%, suggesting that this type should be nowhere. So the remaining questions went through some common concerns that we hear, and really to break down potential sources of impact. So I'm going to skip through this one fairly quickly. We did hold an event specific for the business community with limited turnout, but we ended up having really good conversations with the business owners that came. We also asked the wider community about potential impacts to existing commercial businesses and for the villages themselves, with some mixed results. One of the things that we heard as well was that there may be too many businesses in one area, or that this project might be too far-reaching. And I think one of the things that happened with this project at this stage is we are drilling down to details. So there's lots of little questions. Are you support or not sure? And it ends up being a lot of information to support those questions. So what we hear you, there was a lot of information, but necessary at this stage of the process. And then the slide as well, it really looks to indicators to try to get an idea of what to expect. How many more businesses could we see? I think it's important to show that right now we do allow businesses for tutoring and music classes. There's only 5 of them in the district, and that combined with the questionnaire, question 3, how many are looking to open a business? Not that many on a relative scale. And so then we get to the revisions that we're putting forward. Responding to the comments that we received, the first option is to modify the type 3 businesses to reduce the number of potential customers to 4 instead of 7. And then going through the comments that we received for business hours, to reduce business hours to Monday to Saturday from 9 to 5. That allows potential to support the response, or where the responses from participants who would value a walkable service within the neighborhood, but also reduce the potential conflict, so that the 9 to 5 during business hours is when there'd be less of the residents on that street as well. So it would offset some of those impacts on parking and other things. Some of the other adjustments we're suggesting to reduce the potential for noise and nuisances for type 2 businesses as well, by eliminating townhouses and apartments for type 2 and for type 3. And then just noting as well that in the previous iteration, we had a list of example businesses. one of the things that we heard as well, to have a broad list of business types, so personal services, instead of listing out things like hairstylists and that, have broad categories so that you have that flexibility to include something that belongs in that category as well. And then a note on special businesses, childcare and urban agriculture, that they were really well supported throughout the responses, and so that they are being brought forward as presented. All right, and then the option 2 is to eliminate the type 3 businesses altogether. And all of the other adjustments are there as well. I did want to point out one change as well. Under non-resident employees, we have added back one non-resident employee for the type 1 businesses. The reason for that is our current regulations allow for one non-resident employee. And so this way, it doesn't suddenly make a current business non-conforming with that change. I also wanted to point it out as well that regardless of where council lands on what the program says, there will be options for someone who has a really good idea that may not fall within the framework or the regulations. The temporary use permit can be a really good option to test out a business idea at a particular location that might work, that may not be appropriate across the district. And these are council decisions with public notice, so something can be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And then property owners always have the opportunity to apply for a zoning amendment to change the zoning if they feel confident with their idea. I will skip over the licensing slide. There will be more information come forward on this, depending on which direction council decides to go. When this comes back, there will be more information, exactly what the adjustments on fees and enforcement might look like. All with this idea of smart regulation, we're trying to reduce the administrative burden that might come with this. There will certainly be a transition, but it's so that the expansion of home-based businesses doesn't overwhelm our system. So finally, we're looking for council's direction tonight on either option 1 or 2, or another option if council wants to tinker with this some more. And then some direction on public hearing. Regardless of where council goes with this, there will be the option to hold a public hearing or not. But the public notice timing changes with that decision. So if we have direction tonight on that will definitely ensure that we have all of our ducks in a row. And that's it. Again, thanks to everyone who participated, and happy to answer your questions.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I will turn to members of council for questions. I have Councillor Green, Patterson, Watson to start. Smart.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Brown, thank you very much for the report and the presentation. That's helpful. 2 questions. One, I'm a little concerned about the sample size on the responses to this survey and the questionnaire. And my second question, so I just wondered if there was any discussion about sample size. It just seems quite small to me and quite limited, but I would love to hear your comments on that. And the second question is, what would enforcement and regulation and/or monitoring look like in terms of making sure that these businesses adhere to the licensing regulations? Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, through the mayor. So the sample size is quite small, especially in-person events. And we've already had some discussion with our communication teams as how we could do better outreach next time. Especially with the business owners, we actually had a really excellent discussion with the ones who did come, and they had some suggestions how we would do better outreach for that group as well. As far as the questionnaires, the number of questionnaires we felt was fairly healthy, given that this really is a fairly niche topic. And when we engaged previously in 2025, the engagement was combined with the OCBP update, which generated quite a few more. And so for me, it's hard to say whether any more response could have been generated for that one. But yeah, we're always looking at improving that.
Thank you, and I appreciate your honesty on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I have in my speaking order Patterson, Watson, Smart, Braithwaite. So over to you, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Mr. Brown. Thanks for the report, Mr. Brown. First question is, have staff considered using the North American Industry Classification System for Canada so that we have a categorized list that is actually used by the industry and by municipalities, and so you could actually do some benchmarking, and it's rather than trying to make up the categories ourselves, if we considered doing that?
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, Councillor Patterson. Yeah, when we're coming up with definitions, we don't usually start from scratch. We look for precedents in other communities, kind of what others in the area are calling certain things. And so the definitions that we've been working with so far have been come from that. We can, again, as we land where the program ends, we can definitely do some more review on that to make sure that we have the that we have the proper definitions that everyone uses.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you for that. And I guess the other comment I will make is that the feedback I've received was that for many members of the community, they were not supportive of a complaint-driven model, and so they just didn't want to be involved because that was not really addressed, and they felt that it was a municipality pushing its work on the community, and that is not viewed favorably and not something that most people felt that they had the skills to deal with. And so I'm wondering if staff can comment on feedback that they have received and how what other course of action we might look at.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I think it's a comment more broad than just business enforcement, but Mr. Go ahead.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Patterson, and Councillor Green asked a similar question about enforcement as well that I didn't get back to. So one of the things that was proposed, actually our APC brought it up, but it came up in the comments as well, something called smart regulation. And so it's the approach that the district is already using to a degree with the short-term rentals, where the onus really is on the applicant to provide a declaration or a management plan up front when they're applying for their license, and it's a way so that there isn't an onerous inspection program. It isn't an onerous process in there. Once that's there, the district is able. Again, it does rely on a complaint-based system to report any violations of those regulations. And once a complaint comes in, we are able to work with the business owner and potentially with the neighbors as well to come up with a solution that works for everybody. I'm not sure I can comment on the complaint-based system. All of our regulations are quite like that.
Mr. Bull for a moment.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just to add on that question and discussion. As you can see in the staff report right now, home-based businesses don't result in a lot of formal complaints. That said, there may be concerns out there that we don't hear from because residents are hesitant to report or to not understanding exactly what they can do. There is another model that we use for regular businesses. It's a bit different. It focuses on fire safety. So our commercial businesses are inspected yearly by the fire department, but that's much more a focus on fire safety. It has some other benefits, but that's an example of something that is more proactive and recurring. To set something up like that for home-based business, maybe for a different reason, maybe it's a spot check, that could definitely be looked into as part of the implementation. But it would require resources, and the current complaint-based approach is a long-standing approach for the district, and it can be, of course, revisited and tweaked, and maybe dependent on certain businesses. It can be there could be maybe specific actions or programs maybe for a certain year, for example. Those are options that could be considered that would have some implications for cost and staffing to make that happen. Thank you.
I'm going to go down to Councillor Watson, then Smart, then Braithwaite.
Mayor, do we need a motion, to extend the meeting?
We no, because we started this meeting at just after 9 o'clock, so we're
Oh,
okay.
perfect, thank you.
But we should still try and finish soon, just for the record. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, and thank you, staff, for bringing this back to us. It really does focus the mind to have this in front of us now, and I really appreciate the table. The table in the report is really the crux of the matter, and so I'm going to be referring to that, I guess, in my questions. The first, and it's sort of along three lines, the first thing I wanted to ask about is how the, in the background to the report, staff reminds us that this push to actually consider a new regulatory framework really particularly got ahead of steam around COVID when people's work habits changed quite dramatically. And I wanted to really understand, particularly with respect to type 1 business category, your type 1 impacts, what the practical difference would be, or you think is, between somebody who is working at home to earn their own income there versus somebody who is working at home for their employer and also earning their income there, and why we think we need a regulatory framework to actually manage that. When I was trying to think about what that would be, but I wonder if staff or the consultant or the discussion has ever gotten to that issue. What is the distinction between somebody working at home because they're working at home for their employer, which many people do now, up to 5 days a week, and somebody who's in the type 1 typology who's earning their own income independently, in terms of impacts and the policy rationale for a regulatory framework?
All right, back to basics, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. It is very difficult to decipher one from the other. In many cases, somebody sitting at a desk, one has their own billing system and taxes, and one is being paid through an employer. There really fundamentally isn't any difference in that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Bull.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I find it a very interesting question because it does raise the question for type 1. Should it be dealt with differently than employees working from home, not employees from the district, but in general? So I think it's a fair question that we haven't quite broached so much. So we've been focusing on an existing business license process for these businesses. And that currently is mostly, well, it's a bit of type 1 and type 2. But so thanks for the question. Thanks.
Councillor Watson?
Yeah, thank you. My next question has to do with and I guess it would really be, I think you'll hear my commentary later about type 1 and whether we need it, but even with respect to type 2, the sort of space limits that are being set and how they would have been determined. I would certainly with respect to a type 1 business, 300 square feet within the context of a larger home, and the kind of activity that might actually go on. I was thinking about things like sewing rooms, workshops, weaving, somebody who does weaving, an artist who might need a larger studio for manipulating and storing canvases and stuff, and how that number, that 300 square foot or 28 square meters was derived. I'm curious about that.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the thresholds for all the types of businesses were derived out of research of policies in other communities. Looking at around, I know that Esquimalt just either have adopted or in the process of updating their regulations, and they're in that same ballpark of somewhere between 25 and 30% of the gross floor area up to a certain point. And I would say that where our numbers are consistent to about where those land.
So comparative analysis and when
Yes.
the policy work was done. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. My final question has to do with type 2 and the suggestion that one additional parking space would be required. And I guess I'm quite concerned when I see that, given all the other work we've done in the municipality through our small-scale multi-unit housing, to really make sure that those changes don't impact our green space, our trees, our landscaped areas. And it seems really counterintuitive to me to be suggesting that we need an additional parking space. So I wondered, certainly in the consultation, you refer to anticipated impacts. Has any parking study been done about what would drive parking need or use? Just like we require parking studies for other developments, has there been any formal work to look at whether, in fact, there would actually be an impact, or are just people presuming that we should have an extra parking space?
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for the question. You're correct. We had quite a long discussion about parking spaces as well, and balancing what we heard from the community, where the parking always comes up. It's always one of the concerns, whether taking up street parking or should it be off street. And balancing that, okay, if we need now an extra parking space, are we going to eventually take away space on that lot for another housing unit? Or in that the whole discussion over permeable surfaces as well. And it's why that even in a type 3, we're still at one space and not going more than one. So, no, I wouldn't say that any formal study has been done on these. Through the application process, so the way that this would work is we would expect the applicant to identify where this actual parking space would be, and presumably, if working with the size of the lot. It may already exist, it just needs to be designated for the business.
I just have what maybe, I'm not sure it's going to lead to a question, but just a comment about that. I know that I haven't looked at this stat recently, but a few years ago, the average length of a homeowner staying in a home was 5 years. I'm just concerned about a regulatory model that actually requires a parking space for a business that may only last for 2 or 3 years. And it really would change our municipal landscape and our land patterns for no long-term benefit at all. And so I'm flagging that I'm really concerned about this suggestion, and I will be speaking to it later.
I'm going to just turn that into a question, because similar thoughts that occurred to me, and when I wasn't clear on it, I'll ask the question, because I think it needs to be asked, is is it feasible within this? Because I think the parking concerns are always going to be legitimate, but we talked about having a declaratory model of like, you will comply with our pieces. Would it be possible within our policy or piece that part of that declaration is that the home-based business, especially for type 1 and type 2, that they could just declare that they would make available an off-site parking spot would be available should they have clients attending their home, as opposed to having to build a new parking spot for clients should one ever arrive at their home. I'm just wondering if that's a model that we could possibly implement, as opposed to so rather than the physical piece, have it as part of more of a declarative with, of course, subject to enforcement.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think that would certainly be the approach with the declaration or a management plan, right? To give us a site plan, okay, there's an X spot in the driveway for the business.
Or they would reserve it if they were having people visiting, et cetera. That
Yeah.
would be yeah. Okay. Thanks. Councillor Smart and then Braithwaite.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll start first with through you, Mayor, with my question regarding the parking. And I guess that was just to elaborate on, I just wondered if staff considered putting a similar regulation that we have for secondary suites where like potentially we would allow for the provision of a bike rack instead of a parking space, just again, building on that sustainability model, like the whole concept of us allowing home businesses is for those smaller walkable communities. And so people are ideally walking and biking to these home businesses and not driving a car. So I just wondered if staff had considered not providing a requirement for a vehicle. Well, actually, it doesn't actually say, it says one additional off-street parking space. It doesn't actually say car spot. But that could be cycling infrastructure instead.
Yes, thank you for the suggestion. I would say that, if council wanted to put that forward as direction to have either parking space or bike parking or another TDM measure, that might be appropriate.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My next question is just with regards to the potential deletion of townhouses from the type 2 typology. And I just wondered, in my review of the material, it wasn't entirely clear, but did staff interpret that there was significant feedback against townhouses and all type 2 businesses? Because I could see that there'd be a reaction to potentially music lessons and townhouses, even though our construction of townhouses currently provides a lot of soundproofing with new construction. But I just wondered what the actual concern was of potentially somebody providing tutoring in a townhouse and that kind of potentially creating an inequitable situation where we're not allowing for a lot of those other type 2 businesses to occur in townhouse development. So I just wondered if, with that sort of finer grain, was the feedback really against all type 2 businesses or just particularly, obviously, the music one in townhouses?
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for the question. I would say that the feedback overall was more of the concern over noise and disturbances to neighbors, not necessarily about a specific type of type 2 business. Going back to the slides, type 2 businesses were supported in townhouses 65%. So there was some decent support there. Again, whether or not we need to shape that a little bit more, or simply acknowledge that there is the possibility. But another option as well is to look at the permitting process and whether or not it should be the district regulating the townhouses, or maybe it should be a strata regulating what can go into that complex.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My next question is just with regards to how will staff categorize whether an artist maker business fits into 1, 2, or 3? Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you. So that would come in the declaration, the application, whether or not the business expects to have customers and how many customers to their business.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, my next question is with regards to, in our OCP, we've allowed for work-live units on the ground floor in condominium buildings. Will the wording going forward still allow for type 2 businesses to be in work-live units? Because they technically might be considered residential in apartment buildings.
Mr. Brown? Mr. Bull, sorry.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I'm not aware, there may be specific zones that have live work units, but we don't have a general option for it in the zoning bylaw right now. I think if we were to follow up in the future on that OCP policy and create a framework for it, that would probably mean that we need to revisit this program as well, make sure it's aligned. Right now, I don't think we anticipate those units in the current program, because simply we don't really have an avenue for them right now. And the other thing is, thinking back to some of my experience with other arrangements about live work, it's a bit of a different model where the amount of floor area for the business is actually higher than what we intend to achieve with this program. This is truly an accessory business in a home. Live work is more of a truly mixed use, a bit of a different category that will probably warrant its own review and customized regulation. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thanks. And my last question through you, Mayor, is just with regards to, just a second, sorry. I just want to make sure this wasn't asked already. So the staff recommendation that's at the beginning of the report has a few line items, but doesn't include everything in the blue chart that is option 1 and 2. And so is the staff recommended motion actually the entirety of the chart labeled option 1 that I have on page 168 of the agenda, or is it just the wording that is in the recommendation? And the main difference I see is particularly the parking aspect is not listed in the wording of the staff recommendation currently. And so I just wanted to clarify, if we move the staff recommendation, are we moving the staff recommendation literally, or are we moving what staff assumes to be the entirety of option 1 on page 168? Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for checking our motion. I would definitely say that if you were to move option 1 and include the parking, that to please amend the motion to add that line as something that we missed in our recommendation.
Mr. Bull?
So yeah, just to be clear that option 1, as outlined at the table, is the staff recommendation, and we missed one item in the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we understand what's happening there, but we will walk through it when we get a motion on the floor. This is not subject to public input. I do have Councillor Braithwaite still on the speaking list. Please go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much, Mayor. And I'm going to go on with the parking comments and questions because I feel pretty strongly about the parking spot being there. And the reason for that is because I believe our regulatory model right now for commercial businesses is that they do have to have parking spaces. And if they don't supply parking spaces for certain businesses, then they have to pay a fee. And I would hate to think that we would treat the home-based businesses differently, because I think that the commercial businesses might take homage to that. So I think that we need to be a little bit careful on that. So my question around the parking would be, and I think that this might have been answered already, but will the staff inspect the parking availability before issuing the license, or will they actually just rely on the applicant declarations?
Mr. Brown, what's the current plan?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, If council resolved that a parking space would be required, through that declaration or, right, there would be a requirement for a site plan. It may not be to the same extent as if you're building a house, but to indicate where on the property that parking space would be located.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I may, Mayor, around the enforcement, how will staff ensure that the businesses remain within their approved category after licensing? Would that be based on complaints, or is there a check process in place where we could be checking to ensure that that business is within their approved category?
Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it'd be, thank you for the question. It wouldn't be so unlike many of our regulations. Once an inspection is done, what happens inside a building is really hard to predict. No different than the restriction on floor area, whether they actually stick within that. Yeah, enforcement for the home-based businesses after licensing has occurred would be on a complaint basis. And so once we would have a complaint, maybe there is more activity than what should be for that category. That's when bylaw can follow up with the license holder to education and that try to find a reasonable solution, or if they are not in the correct category, then we can take action to rectify that.
Thank you. And if I may, Mayor, and then would that still be based on like 2 complaints against that business? And also, what kind of enforcement resources will be available for this? Because I'm imagining that the bylaw officers that we have right now already have their hands full. So are we going to need more resources for enforcement?
Cool.
Thank you, Mayor. For you, let me see, I'm looking back at the table that shows current complaints, 2 to 3 a year. It depends a bit what happens and are there more complaints. It would require 2 complaints. That's based on our current enforcement policy. So if the volume doesn't change much, then it can be just absorbed in the regular workload. If it increases, maybe because the business license numbers do increase over time substantially, then that probably would increase, the number of complaints might increase as well, then it might need to be revisited. But given the current history, I think most of our complaints that we deal with for bylaw compliance are not related to businesses. Thanks.
Thank you. And if I may, Mayor, do we have any idea? I know that in the past, before we agreed to have secondary suites, we kind of had an estimate of how many illegal or non-conforming secondary suites we had within the district. And I'm wondering if we have any idea on how many businesses we have that don't have licenses, because when I saw the figure of, I think it was 5 tutoring or music lesson licenses that we had, I was actually quite shocked at that. So I'm wondering if we have an estimate of how many businesses are within the district that don't have a business license.
If we knew, we'd be after them, Councillor Braithwaite. Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you. We do not have any numbers or estimate how many. We believe they're there, and there's evidence in the comments from the questionnaire that they're there. How many of them and to what extent is tough to estimate.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, Mayor, would be about the business concentration. And I'm wondering if staff have considered limiting the concentration of higher impact home businesses within one neighborhood, if that ever became an issue. So I guess if there were 12 people on a street who wanted to have music lessons or something like that, is there a consideration to limit the concentration of higher impact home businesses?
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for the question. it can be really difficult to put it in some kind of cap on a number of licenses. I'd have to go back and look at the community charter and some other places to see if we can actually do it. Yeah, going back to the comments of Mr. Poole and in the report as well. Just about understanding the expectations of where, just because a new type of business is permitted doesn't mean that they're going to happen. I will also highlight part of the report as well. That's not part of the recommendation tonight. That when bylaws do come forward, the recommendation is to set a review point a couple of years down the road, where we can look at what change has happened, and if further regulation and further restriction is required, potentially look at that time. Just looking at the past history of our business licensing, it's hard to know exactly how many new businesses, whether or not you're going to have them all concentrated in one area or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. At least you wouldn't have noise complaints if they were all having music lessons at the same time on the same street. That'd be one advantage. Okay, I just have one question on this one, and that is the, actually, maybe I don't even have to ask that question, to be totally honest. Yeah, I guess I will. The feedback that we got suggesting that we keep, type 2 and 3 businesses out of, to infill housing only, not in multifamily. These were, as I understand it, primarily driven by noise concerns. I guess, I tend to be of the nature of wanting to, we can't enforce that much, and these things get very complicated very quickly. Is it not, if it's a noise issue, would not most stratas or any multifamilies have rules about noise that they could enforce on their own, and that would not normally fall to us for management? If someone, for instance, turned up a music studio in their apartment, they would probably be a contravention. I'm just trying to get a sense here of how much of this would realistically fall to the municipality, should there be allowance for some type 2 businesses, at least in the in multifamily or strata. Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for the question. Just confirming whether it is our practice right now to require strata authorization before a business license is issued. Now, I know from previous stops that tool has been used as well, where the strata council gets a say whether a business license is issued in the first place, and that would allow the strata to be the primary enforcement body for that business. Certainly, the district could step in if it became an issue for other neighbors as well. But that is something that we could look at our permitting structure and our enforcement.
That's fine. Thank you. That's good enough. Thanks. I just I've heard questions around the table here, and just in the interest of getting us to a resolution to advance. If we're looking at option 1, I think what I've heard around the table is there's some consideration of whether or not both type 2 and 3 businesses should be limited to infill housing only if only type 3 should. And I've heard concerns about the parking requirement to be part of the bylaw, or if there's some other softer approach to make sure that parking is provided, but leave that to the business to find a solution for that, essentially, depending on their customer base. So those are the 2 things I've kind of heard around the table. There may be something else there. So before we get to a motion, go ahead, Councillor Watson. Or you can even move.
No. I think the other thing you've heard, particularly for me, is whether type 1 businesses should actually be regulated at all. It creates a terrible inequity between 2 exactly identical sets of behaviors within buildings, and I just think it's inappropriate.
Can I just, I'm going to take that question, because again, minimal is good for me, but I do understand that all businesses are required to have a business license. So if you're a home-based business doing business as a corporation, you're going to be required to have a business license. And so if it's just a single person working at home, they're going to need a business license. And if it has no impact on neighbors, having a low-cost basic business license for a type 1 business to me makes a certain amount of sense. But I might just turn to staff, because I'm not 100% sure what the legal requirements are, but I know in my personal experience, that if you're running a business, you need to have a business license. It's just a requirement for all kinds of things, from insurance to just getting a bank account. Mr. Bowl?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we cannot confirm if that's through the provincial legislation, but our business licensing bylaw indeed does require anybody conducting a business to have a license. And that's there's also another category of very minor impact or minor scope businesses. For example, people teaching classes in our rec centers, they're also required to take out a business license, but we also regularly hear about that's a little bit concerning if there's only, say, 5 or 10 classes a year. However, that's how the current business license bylaw is indeed set up. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Councillor Watson might take this one, you may want to just consider like an even cheaper version of that or something, but it is going to probably be a requirement for a number of businesses to have that piece. Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. Through Mayor to staff, I guess I just wanted to ask, following up on that line of thinking, that what is the logic behind having business hours for a type 1 business that doesn't have any customers? Like, what is the difference between somebody knitting a sweater on the sofa versus knitting a sweater on the sofa that they're going to sell the next day? I guess I just wonder what the reasoning for having business hours is if there are no customers. What the concern is that we're trying to regulate.
I don't think we can regulate that at that point, but go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. Yeah, when we originally constructed the 3 business types, the business hours is something that other places do regulate as well. The 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. lines up with our construction noise bylaw, and so it would come into play if there was ever a complaint and we needed a framework to regulate it. Maybe unlikely for the type 1s, as you mentioned.
So we have a recommendation here for option 1. It sounds like we'll probably have some motions to amend, but maybe it's worthwhile for us to get it on the table so we can start that process.
Excuse me, Mayor, sorry, I have my hand up, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Braithwaite, go ahead.
Did you say we have we have a recommendation for option 1? I think that we also should not, you've mentioned option 1 and option 2. I don't think we should discount option 3 personally, because I do feel pretty strongly that we should be having a public hearing around this. And I know that I've heard from the business community, the BIA, that they would prefer to have a public hearing around this as well. So when it comes time for motions, I'll be wanting to put that motion on the floor.
That's fine. I think there's 3 sections to the recommendations. One is the receive, one is the make amendments, and then the third is to whether or not to waive the public hearing. So we'll certainly get a chance to talk about that, but as a separate item in that. So why don't we start at the easy one? Why don't we have a motion to receive the report? Moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Braithwaite, you had your hand still up? Nope, that was it, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I'll turn to council to get direction. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I just have a process question. On page 11 of the report, it shows option 3 with 2 conditions, and I just wondered, is that the option 3 that is being referenced? The one that says receive what we learned, home-based business engagement report for information, 2, direct staff to prepare the necessary amendment bylaws to implement the proposed updates to home-based business regulations without the proposed tier for type 3 home-based businesses. And that would be providing direction to hold a public hearing as well in the opening preamble. Is that the option 3 we're looking at?
Sorry, I mean, there's no motion on the floor at this point. Option 1 is...
I was just, I wasn't sure which okay, it's fine.
I took number 3 as the third part of the, component 3 of the motion, which I would consider to be a separate motion from all of them. So, turn to members of council. I think probably easiest to take the one of the option 1 or option 2 or option 3, but option 3 doesn't make it very easy to make amendments to get to something that's workable. So probably option 1 is my recommendation, but take option 1 or option 2 on the table. Councillor Appleton, I thought I saw your hand pop up.
I will move option 1 for consideration, Your Worship.
Okay. So just for clarification, everybody looking at this is direct staff to prepare the necessary amendment bylaws. But for type 3 things, there's those changes specifically for type 3 and limiting, and then the second part of that is limiting type 2 and 3 businesses to infill housing only. So those are the changes to the pieces that are in front of us. So on the floor, open for options for amendments. Go ahead, Councillor. You want to speak to it, Councillor Appleton, before I go?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be very brief. I think this is probably broadly supportable, although I expect some amendments, and that I would also bring some amendments of my own if those are not already addressed. So I do think that some of these components do need to be, I think option 1 is the broad basis, but I do have some ideas for amendments. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Smart, you wish to speak?
I just wish to add a couple of amendments to the motion. The first one would be with regards to 2B, to limit type 2 to infill housing and townhouses, and type 3 businesses to infill housing only. So it's essentially just adding townhouses for type 2.
Okay, so the motion is to amend the 2B to limit type 2 to infill and townhouses, and type 3 to infill housing only. Okay, that's moved and seconded. Is there discussion on that?
I'm sorry, Mayor, is that 2B? Because on what I'm looking at for 2B, it says reduce the permitted hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Type 2C for me is type 3 businesses not permitted on Sundays and statutory holidays. I'm very confused here.
So option 1.
Yes.
So fair enough. So we'll look at option 1 within the, because the motion that's at the front of the report doesn't include option 2C. But option 2B is still, I forgot.
No, I'm looking at page, sorry. I'm looking at page 11.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just looking at the recommendation report at the beginning of the report is actually, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Your Worship, I think it's the same. The numbering has been, is not consistent. But I think so you could go with either one. It's that in the front, it's 2A and then Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, whereas in the
So the formatting is definitely clearer within the page 11, so I think everybody should go there for that language. So, so it's just a little confusing because there's 2 2s here. It should be probably 2 II. So we have 2.1 A, B, and C, 2.1 A, B, and C, and then 2.2 limit type 2 businesses to infill housing. So what we're talking about here is amending the item that 2.2 to limit type 2 and type 3 businesses to infill housing only. And that's the change. So, well, thank you for that catch and clarification. Councillor Braithwaite, you still have the floor if you wish.
So yes, so I'm sorry, could you just repeat what the motion is again, please?
Sure. So the amendment is to amend section 2 or point 2.2 of the recommendation to limit type 2 businesses to infill and townhomes only, and type 3 businesses to infill housing only.
Thank you. Yeah, and I actually will be voting against the amendment because I would prefer not to have type 3 businesses included in the original motion. Thank you.
Okay. if you, I'll give you an opportunity to make that amendment proposal, but you may still want to consider if this improves or doesn't improve the overall motion to your feelings, so. It's on the amendment. Councillor Watson?
Just to say that I'll support that. I think it makes sense. We're at a time when we're actually trying to encourage townhouse development in our community. Townhouses are beautifully separated spaces, which allow, because they're typically on 3 floors, this kind of division in space for different uses. And I think it would be really kind of snobby or something to exclude townhouses from the ability to have type 2 businesses in them. So I think it's a completely reasonable suggestion.
Councillor Green?
Thank you. I will be voting against this particular option. I would have supported option 3, which is self-explanatory, and I think we should have a public hearing. I don't know how many of you have talked to the Business Improvement Association, but they're very concerned about the impacts on local small businesses here and on the local economy. So I think it would behoove us to go forward with a public hearing at the very
That
least.
option will be for consideration. That is a separate motion that we will consider.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll speak briefly to the motion. Or Councillor Braithwaite, did you wish to speak to the motion? Oh, your hand is still up, that's all.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'll speak in favor of it. And in fact, personally, I don't think, I know the feedback we had was some concerns about type 2 businesses in multifamily and other pieces, but I honestly don't see this being our place to manage. If someone wants to do a tutoring or music or other small impact pieces, I mean, they would have to comply with the rules of either the rental company or the strata council, who can, it's been a long time since I've been on a strata council, but you can set rules that limit the businesses and what they do, and that's really up to the culture of the building. So I personally, this doesn't go far enough to me, but I'm fine with it. I think it's a step, and if we want to change it in future, we can consider that. That would be probably part of the review process. So yeah, totally supportive of this. I just think it's, we get in our own way sometimes on some of the minutiae of some of these rules. So supportive of this motion to include townhouses. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the amendment? And any opposed? I have Councillor Green and Councillor Braithwaite opposed. You had one other amendment?
Yes, with regards to the parking requirement, I'm just trying to find in this newly revised option 1 if the parking is actually in here.
I think there is, so right now, there's a requirement for a additional parking spot and for type 2 and 3 businesses, or is it just type 3 businesses? Type 2 and 3, yeah.
So it's not actually in the motion right now, but it's assumed to be?
No, I think council would have to add it in.
Just sorry, for clarification, the preliminary did not require a parking permit, so if we want to include a parking permit requirement, it would have to be added in at this point, or vice versa. So I'm not going to scroll around on my screen because I've got my motion in front of me, and I want to make sure I keep it here. Mr. Brown.
Yes, it was in the table in the report, but it wasn't in the original motion. And so if council wanted to add in the requirement for her parking space, need to add it to the motion.
Okay, so currently, as the motion is worded, there is no requirement for additional parking for type 1, 2, or 3, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
With that clarification, I have no amendment to make.
Okay. Councillor Watson.
I have an amendment to the motion. I would like,
Councillor Braithwaite, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to move that the type 1 business be implementation of type 1 business licensing be suspended pending the receipt of a staff report on whether or not we are required to license business. I know that we have the under the community charter, we have the option to license businesses, but I'm not sure it's actually a requirement. We've got the power to do it if we wish. And I just don't think I have enough clarity on whether we need to be doing this for type 1 businesses at this present time.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a seconder? Seconded? Oh, no. I'm looking for. Okay, go ahead. So it's seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, I think I don't, sitting here right now, I don't have clarity on whether we actually are required to license businesses. I know that the community charter gives us powers to do it if we wish to, but just because we have a business bylaw that's done this before, we're in a bylaw review process right now to look at how we regulate home-based businesses. And I am not convinced that we need to regulate type 1 businesses, given that there's no discernible difference between those kinds of businesses and people just working at home for their employer. And so while there may be arguments to be made, or we are required to do this, I don't think we know that at this present time. So moving forward with a regulatory regime when we're not even clear about the basis for it seems to me premature. So I would like, before we actually implement this, to actually understand whether we have to do it or not.
Thank you, Councillor Smart, and then Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. I seconded the motion for discussion, but I won't actually be supporting it. As a business owner, I do require a business license for a variety of different things, and so I would need the mechanism of the municipality to provide me with that for a BC Business Registry, for my architectural association. So it does logistically provide a purpose, and I understand the point of, do we really need to be regulating it, but the actual physical piece of paper is surprisingly very important.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will not support the proposed amendment because I don't think we should confuse the activity with the operation of a business. If you're an employee of a business, the employer has the business license. If you're operating the business, you carry the license. So I think there's a distinct difference, and so it's not what the activity is. And I realize, that perhaps while the activity is the same, there's still a business license required, and so I won't support it.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, for the same reasons, I won't be supporting it either. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just chip in, I won't support it, but and one of the reasons not mentioned is just that because it is required for so many purposes, we effectively force everybody into paying for a type 2 business license, which doubles the cost if we don't implement the type 1. So I'm kind of the mind that we should make this available, and I think the tiered model is a reasonable one for that purpose. So, all right, I'll leave it there. Any other discussion before I call the question? So this is on the motion to amend to suspend the implementation of type 1 business licenses. Okay, seeing no other discussion, all those in favor and opposed? I have Councillor Patterson, Smart, Appleton, Green, Braithwaite, and myself opposed. That motion fails. Anything else, Councillor Watson? Okay. I think Councillor Braithwaite, I had you on my list for motions.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And so I will put a motion on the floor to require one additional off-street parking space for both type 2 and type 3 businesses.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I spoke about this a little bit before in regards to commercial businesses have that requirement, and I don't think that we should not require home-based businesses to do the same, especially because commercial businesses do have to pay into the parking fund if they don't have the required number of parking spaces available. So I think that it would be it'll send a good message to our Business Improvement Association that we are protecting them, at least as far as this goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Other discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Smart, and then Patterson. Councillor Patterson, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, I was just going to, I seconded it, so I was just going to also state what Councillor Braithwaite did, and it's parity with the business community. And I think we, while wanting to support home-based businesses, I still want to concretely support our business community, because that's really important to the community also.
Go ahead, Councillor Smart, and then Appleton
Yeah,
around the table.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion. I feel like one of the primary objectives of home-based businesses is walkable communities where we are not bringing a vehicle to the business that is walking or cycling. I also just see how this plays out. So either somebody has a driveway that accommodates an extra spot already, and then it's just a bureaucratic paperwork thing where somebody has to actually draw a site plan, and it results in no difference. Or they need to now widen their driveway in order to accommodate this extra parking spot. That results in a loss of green space, potentially a loss of tree, and no net gain of parking because they have now taken away a parking spot on the street to create an extra parking spot in their driveway. So it says a negative impact from an environmental point of view. It has a significant cost impact, and as was already pointed out in this meeting, may result in somebody actually deciding to move if they want a home business and they don't currently have enough parking. So I don't see any benefit to this whatsoever, and I see it actually working against promoting home-based businesses.
Councillor Appleton, then Watson and Green.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, opposed to the motion for much the same reasons. We are looking for locally supported businesses, especially for type 2 businesses. The provision of an additional off-street parking spot makes no sense. We want people to be frequenting local businesses. We want people to be able to be motivated and supported and be facilitated in running a home-based business. That's the purpose of the whole exploration and the purpose of us putting in place the bylaws. If you're going to incur the massive cost and the potentially significant impact to green space to construct an off-street parking spot to facilitate a home-based business, most people are going to walk away, or there's going to be a net negative impact to the community that surrounds it, and erodes support and erodes uptake of home-based businesses. So we need to not be driving decisions of this nature towards parking, and especially for, I can see a potential argument for a type 3 business of a certain nature needing some additional parking provision, but certainly not type 2 businesses. So I can't support this motion, Your Worship.
Mr. Watson and Green.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not be supporting the motion. I think, first of all, I would like to address the quite different circumstances of commercial businesses and commercial zones and in neighborhood villages. The context for the parking requirements there are very different. We're talking about a building form and agglomeration of activities that do generate parking demand, and we provide for it in our planning and our zoning. It's very different from thinking about the odd activity within a neighborhood. And so to suggest that somebody needs a parking space in the neighborhood just because businesses in our villages need them, I just don't think that that argument really holds much water. It's a very different form, and it's for a different purpose. I also would be very concerned about requiring additional parking spaces when really these businesses are very temporary. They're being relicensed on an annual basis, as opposed to our commercial enterprises in our villages, which are pretty much there for good. So permanent establishments, their clientele or their ownership may change, but their activity is still there in that place, as opposed to the comings and goings in our neighborhoods where people move, they sell, they move to Winnipeg, whatever. So it would be very unfortunate to take away green space for a very temporary need. I also think that it's really, we actually don't have any information at all to suggest it's necessary. So to actually create rules without having good foundational data makes no sense to me at all. And I think that it's completely counter to everything we've been doing as we've tried to do gentle densification in our neighborhoods. All the regulations we've put in place and come back to review to make sure that we've got less impermeable surface, to protect the open space, to make sure that the green space is consolidated so we have large chunks of it to support the natural environment. I just think it would be a very, very, very big mistake to be asking for more parking in this particular situation. And I just want to say one more thing. The people come and go in the community. That's part of actually having life in healthy communities. And so to have somebody coming to visit your house for a massage therapy appointment, they can come by bike, they can walk, they can come on the bus, maybe they drive. But the reality is people drive through our neighborhoods all the time and park for all sorts of different reasons that we cannot and do not regulate. So to require additional parking in this instance, I think would really be a tragedy, frankly. Thank you.
Councillor Green?
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments, but we still haven't actually heard from the public on this issue. I will support the motion, and I will do so because we already face severe parking issues in a lot of our neighborhoods now. And we are aware of that information. So there is some baseline data around parking and parking crowding and around traffic management. So I will support the motion. I think it's also a matter of equity. And I have said this again. Our local small businesses pay commercial taxes. They are not there forever. They have to renew their business licenses and so on. And they pay hefty rent to some of these building owners. So I think retail business is struggling, and I know that because I've been watching a lot of information and reports about it. They're particularly struggling in buildings where there is housing above. So anything that helps our local small businesses, they do a lot for this community, is something that I will continue to do. But as I say, we have not heard from them directly. Nor have we heard from the public directly through a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. I'll make a comment and I'll see if the mover is interested in perhaps amending the motion on the floor. But I can't support the motion as it stands. I don't think the additional parking space for type 2 and 3 businesses is the right approach. If I look at what type 2 is, it really is a home-based business that has periodic people coming for music lessons, for other type of things. It's not the kind of lesson or business that would support, any kind of additional cost of building a new parking spot for it. Where that changes to me, and I think the logic of the tiered approach that we've come up with is that we have the option that there is now a bit of a middle ground. Type 1 and type 2 have always existed in the community, and they've pretty much existed without pain, occasional transitory pain, but nothing substantive. But type 3 changes the idea, and I think that's the place that I would support a parking requirement. If you're going to have 3-4 people visiting a single family or single family or infill housing home, and that's a regular thing, and you have enough of it to justify getting that kind of license, then to my mind, that's the point where you need to start actually dealing with parking issues, much like any other commercial entity that starts having larger numbers of clients. So I would support it for type 3. I just can't support it for type 2. I just think it's too much onerousness. And I think the only result of it will be that we will just not have people applying for business licenses. People will just say, it's not reasonable, it's cost too much, and so I can't do it. So yeah, I can't support the motion as it is on the floor. I could support if it was just type 3, but I can't support it with type 2 and 3 as it is currently. So,
Mayor, after listening to what you have to say, I would actually be happy to change it to just type 3. I'm not sure if the seconder would be in approval with that, but after hearing what you have to say, I understand where you're coming from, and I think that yes, just having it for type 3, I will change my motion to that.
Is the seconder amendable? So the motion on the floor then is to require an additional parking space only for type 3 businesses. Okay. I'm happy to take more conversation. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
I just wondered through you if the mover is also amenable to adding or alternative TDM measures to the amendment.
Councillor Braithwaite, are you amenable to changing that to parking spot
I'm thinking about that.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let you think.
I think I'll leave the motion as it is, and perhaps we can add that in as another motion afterwards.
Okay. if it's, I'll leave it there. I don't have any great wisdom on how to suggest a change on that one, so I'll leave it. Anything else, Councillor Smart?
No, I mean, I won't be supporting the amendment as worded, just as I stated earlier. Just, I think there's going to be situations where there's going to be businesses that know they have customers that don't have cars, businesses that are on frequent transit routes. So if there's not an alternative that staff could use to address some of these different situations, I can't support the motion.
Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. So not in support for very similar reasons. If we're going to, again, let's focus on the actual, to create an additional off-street parking spot is a significant expense with significant impact. So if we're going to make such a specification, we have to provide, in my opinion, we have to provide an alternative for transportation demand management. We've done this with actual residential buildings. We've done it with other commercial sites around the district. So there is precedent for us reducing a standing parking requirement with respect to providing alternative transportation demand measures. So I can't support this without there being at least some language for somebody to provide an alternative, given the cost. To your point, Your Worship, the costs and the investment in an off-street parking spot, even for a Type 3 this scale of business, could present a strong disincentive for the types of businesses that we're trying to encourage. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just, for clarification purposes, I'm not entirely clear on if a building license requires, if you want a Type 3 business, it may require a parking stall. What is, is there a variance process? Is there a appeal process, or is it just you must meet these criteria or you don't get a business license? I'm sorry, I'm just not clear on that process. Maybe everybody else is. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, just for clarification, so the question is about for business license in particular.
Correct. We're having a conversation here around do we put into our bylaws parking or equivalent TDM, or is it a process? Is there a process if a business has a license application and they say, it's not practical, I'm at this corner, I'm just servicing my local neighborhood, I don't need an extra parking spot, is there an appeal? I'm just curious about what that process would look like if we thought about it.
Yeah, it would likely end up being a variance to the parking requirement. Yeah, as it would be that the home-based business would get regulated through the zoning bylaw, parking through the parking facilities bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah, and the appeal would be through a variance.
Through a variance process. Okay. Okay. Councillor Watson, did you have your hand up on this?
I won't be able to support the motion unless it had the bit about transportation demand management for the Type 3 businesses, so thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other hands on this. So the motion right now is that to amend this to require one additional parking space for Type 3 businesses. And if I might just ask that if this passes, if staff can come back with just clarification on what that process would be, I think that does actually matter for if there's an appeal or a variance process, that would be helpful. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Watson, Appleton, and Smart opposed. That motion carries. Are there other amendments to
Yes, I just have another amendment, please.
Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, I'd like to take out point 3 on option 1, which is to waive the requirement to hold a public hearing for the necessary zoning bylaw. I would like to hold a public hearing.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the entirety of part 2, which is this is where we are, and then I'll take as part 3 as a separate motion, because I think it is different than the amendment piece to the bylaws. So I'll go to Councillor Appleton for amendments.
Thank you, Your Worship. So for clarity, amendment to component 2, not moving on to component 3 at this point. So to the discussion, I would like the amendment motion that was just passed, I would like to further amend that motion for the provision of an off-street parking spot or alternative transportation demand measures.
Probably would have been more appropriate when a motion to amend was on the table, but let me think of how I manage that procedurally. It's not a motion to amend at this point, I guess. It's a motion to amend the main motion as amended to just, so your motion is to add language that allows for alternate transportation demand management in.
As an alternative to what has now been moved
to the
and
parking
passed
spot for
to the
type 3.
parking spot requirement for type 3.
Okay. Is there a second? Seconded. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I've sort of motivated to this point already. There are significant impacts to creating off-street parking spaces. And I feel that this requirement under type 3 is a significant disincentive. We want to encourage local businesses and local clientele. Local clientele are more likely to arrive not by car if we can provide transportation demand management in terms of facilities for larger bikes, cargo bikes, e-bikes, those types of things, or even something creative as far as getting people there by public transit, then I would like people to explore that. There are significant impacts to creating an off-street parking space. So I think that if somebody was contemplating a type 3 business, they would be highly motivated to look at other alternatives to provide, to accommodate people to arrive at their business.
Councillor Washington, did you wish to, I think you've already spoken to it, but you can speak more if you wish.
Yeah, I support totally Councillor Appleton's reasoning and rationale for why there should be alternatives. And I also just want to comment that I think one of the alternatives is the curb, and that transportation demand management, and I mean, we ask building developers to come up with traffic and parking estimates, and I would argue that if somebody in a type 3 business can look to their street and argue that there is always X amount of curb space, that they've met the requirement if they need it, because there's lots of neighborhoods in this community where there is parking to burn on the streets. Definitely not near our villages, but there's lots of parts of town where an extra car on the street would make not one iota of difference, and would then, support somebody who may actually want to drive to the business. But lots of people would be, the point is not lost in me that there's lots of other ways to get there, to riding, biking, and taking the bus. Walking, biking, and taking the bus. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. I support the motion. I just feel this gives flexibility and creativity for situations that we can't yet imagine. Yeah, as is previously discussed, like I can only conceive of the tens of thousands of dollars to create an extra parking space. So I just think we need to be providing options so that we're not actually creating a policy that discourages home-based businesses.
Any other discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I just want to say that we're not discouraging home-based businesses. What we are trying to do is preserve neighborhood harmony, because parking is a very contentious issue. And yes, there are neighborhoods that have a great amount of parking, but very few of them do. And it's changing with densification is changing. So I think it's a really important point that we are not against home-based businesses, but we need to regulate parking in some way.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see other hands. I'm speaking to this one unsure about where to go on it, to be totally honest. I think I agree with the motivational portion of what's been said in favor of asking for a TDM approach. But my sense here is in some ways that if the variance process is a viable one for people to make a case, then they would make that case on a case-by-case basis, that they have a unique situation that they don't need, that their typical business doesn't require it. And now that we've reduced some of the minor variance application costs, that's a significantly cheaper process than it was in the past. So and I'm not sure that's the right process. I'm kind of curious when it comes back on the bylaw piece, if this doesn't pass, what that would look like. But I think it may have some more accountability to go through that process than just to say that TDM is an option. But on the other hand, yeah, I'm torn on this one. I'm not going to lie. I think that the intention here of saying, well, there are going to be, cases where that's not required. Yeah, I guess if I'm going to fall down on this one, it's probably that the default piece should probably be if you're going to have multiple clients visiting concurrently at a business, you should have an obligation of providing at least one parking spot. And if that isn't the necessary case, because the type 3 business isn't the type that requires it, you can make that case that there's other options there. But I do think that probably at that point becomes a point for council or for staff consideration under parameters. So probably not, I don't think I'm going to support this as it stands right now. But I'm certainly not closed-minded to it. I think it has some potential value if that's a better way of, so I'm going to wait and see what I think at this point, ultimately we'll see where this vote goes. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I too am torn on this, but what I am seeing play out physically right now in the neighborhood would make me not support it. I do think that because it's not just one, for type 3 businesses, they can have up to 4 people at a time, so it's not necessarily just one car either. And, putting multiples on some of the streets it's a challenge. And not all streets, but on many of them there are. So I would like to see staff come back with alternatives so that if a business was able to verify that their clientele will not be traveling by vehicles that require parking spots or something, a different TDM type of application, then I would like to see them come and apply for it that way. But otherwise, I'd like to see them provide at least one parking spot. What I'm seeing right now is front yards and backyards quite full of vehicles because it isn't just home-based businesses. There's a lot of pressure on some of the neighborhoods right now. And so I would rather be more cautious to start and see how it plays out and come back and amend at a later date if that's required, or be able to have them apply for some sort of a variance without a great deal of difficulty in doing so.
Councillor Braithwaite? I'll call the
Yeah,
question.
I would agree with Councillor Patterson, and I think a variance would be the way to do it. So I'll be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see their hands. I'll call the question then. All those in favor of the motion to include alternate for TDM, moved, and those opposed? Councillor Green, Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Patterson, and myself. On my button, the portion does not pass. So we have we're currently section 2 of the motion, which is to prepare necessary amendment bylaws with the number of amendments to it, to include townhouses and type 2 businesses, to include required parking stall for type 3 businesses. Are there any other amendments before I get to calling the question? I don't see any, so I'm going to call the question. We have a multiple time amended piece here, so on the balance of things, we'll test it whether it meets the capacity for most people. All those in favor? No, sorry. Oh, no. And any opposed?
Sorry, Mayor, I was going to speak to my opposition because I do think that I would prefer to have gone with option number 3. So I don't actually agree with having type 3 business included
Okay,
at this time.
that's fine. You're welcome to, sorry, before I call the question, you're welcome, I'll certainly make it available to everybody to speak. So speaking to
Thank
part
you.
2 of the overall motion, please go ahead.
So yeah, so I'll be speaking against that. I won't be voting for it. Thank you very much.
So can you just state again for the
Oh,
rationale?
sorry.
I didn't quite catch that.
Yes, sorry. It's because I would actually prefer option 3 on the table because I do not want type 3 businesses included. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that comment. I always like it when people are voting opposed, that they speak as to the reason why. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion as amended? Please go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. I too will be voting against the motion as proposed. Again, I feel that we need to do a wider, broader consultation with our small businesses in the village and the BI in particular. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to call the question then. On the motion as amended, all those in favor? And those opposed? If Councillor Braithwaite and Green opposed, that motion passes. We have this third section here, the recommendation. I'll put the recommendation on the floor perhaps, or if anyone wants to do that, we'll take another motion to ask for a public hearing.
I would like to put a motion on the floor to ask for a public hearing, please.
In fact, I'm not sure we need a motion to pass the public hearing. So basically, if there's no motion to waive the public hearing, then it will happen.
I will make the motion to waive the public hearing, Your Worship.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Okay, I think it's probably worth just having a brief discussion about the rationale for waiving the public hearing. So go ahead and motivate if you wish.
Your Worship, this is really a matter of, I really see this as something that the community has charged us with for many years. And because of the needs of the district, we have needed to defer the discussion around home-based businesses many times, and there's not been capacity in building and planning in order to address this. This is long overdue, and I can recall people asking me, many years ago about the changes necessary, when this was going to happen, especially on the heels of legalization of secondary suites and facing up to the reality of how people now live and work and what it takes, frankly, to be able to run a small business and to be able to afford to live in Greater Victoria. And so I see this as critically necessary and long overdue. And I think that you would hear strong support for home-based businesses. I'm not sure that the public hearing is going to give us information about it is to council to decide on the technical aspects of the governance of this. Not a public hearing would more accurately be to gather support or not support for the concept of home-based business overall and how it should be broken down. We have that information. We've heard from the public, and we have a reasonable and rational breakdown of the types of businesses that are there. So unless council is interested in revisiting the breakdown of business types and whether or not there is support for home-based business in its entirety, then I'm not sure what new technical information or what new specific information a public hearing would afford council for the basis of their decision-making, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I think I had Councillor Smart and then Watson and then Green.
Yeah, thank you. We have heard clearly from the community that we need a home-based business policy, and so we have now achieved getting to this milestone, and we have already proactively engaged the community and asked them questions and incorporated that feedback into this. So we have engaged the community, and we will continue to review and modify this as we go forward. So I feel that there's been adequate community involvement in what will be a process that continues to evolve in our community.
Thank you. I have Councillor Watson, then Green, then Patterson.
Yes, thank you. I don't think that a public hearing really would add any value to this process right now. We asked staff to go back after we had sort of general outlines of how to proceed, and this, as Councillor Appleton has pointed out, is a process that got delayed because of other priorities that were thrust upon us, but this is long overdue, this work, and the community is expecting it. There are people desperately waiting for these changes to be made so that they can manage their livelihoods and actually pay their own bills and their mortgages. And I think that we asked staff to go back and do some additional consultation. It was well structured and it involved the business community. So I don't think they've been cut out of the process. I think their views about this are fairly accurately reflected and have been consolidated and reported back to us. So I think that it's our job now to actually just move this forward because we have enough information to create a reasonably robust regulatory regime that has support across the community. Thank you.
Councillor Green and then Patterson.
Thank you. I will not support the motion as it's stated. I would support a public hearing, and I guess I'm a little confused. A lot of the people that I've been talking to are very concerned, and they themselves are confused about how this will be implemented and how it will play out. I totally support home-based businesses, no question about it, particularly tiers 1 and 2. But I have talked to the BIA members. A few of them have approached me and asked me about this. And as I mentioned, and this is no diminution of staff whatsoever, but this is a pretty small sample. 21 people attended an open house. 315 answered a questionnaire. And I think the community deserves a voice on something that is as important as this in terms of potential neighborhood impact and impact on housing as well. So I see absolutely nothing wrong. We have, in many ways, we have removed the public voice from a number of our processes. The province has done that also. I think people are anxious to have input, and I think that's why you see the anxiety in the community over change. So these are changes. I support most of them, and I certainly support the tiers 1 and 2 for home-based businesses, but I think our community deserves a voice in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I too support a public hearing on this, especially, yes, I believe that the community has long wanted home-based businesses. I agree with that statement. However, the forms of home-based businesses, I think most of the community were originally talking about were type 1 and type 2. But when I look at the results back on type 3 business, 175 supported it in infill housing, 135 wanted it nowhere. And so that, to me, is not definitive. And I think the type 1 and type 2, most of us are in agreement that is what the community is envisioning, and we want to move ahead with it. But the type 3 is perhaps more than what they originally envisioned. They also did not understand, I think that much of the community thought when we issued a business license, we would be enforcing regulatory framework on the business. And to have a complaint-based model where you have to find someone else to join you in the complaint does really put the responsibility for management of a lot of this on the neighbors in a residential setting. And so I think, particularly with the consideration of type 3 businesses, we need to, in fact, go do the reach out to the public and take a second run at this and see. And I think give the business community another look at what we are intending to do, because they have expressed concerns. They were not part of the first run of analysis that was done on this, and I think that they deserve consideration too. So for that reason, I won't be supporting waiving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I turn to Councillor Braithwaite online.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, I won't be supporting the motion either. You know, I agree that we've been trying to encourage local entrepreneurship and work from home opportunities all along, and we really have been trying to support that. But we still have to ensure that our residential neighborhoods continue to feel primarily residential, and I think that's where we really need to have a public hearing, because it does affect every residential neighborhood and it does change the permitted uses in residential zones. I also have a concern about the number of respondents. I think we needed a wider net for that, and I would agree with Councillor Green. I have been approached by the BIA. The BIA would definitely like to have a public hearing on this, and I believe that we should be supporting our local businesses that are here already. And we are going to have home-based businesses. It's just we need a little bit more information from people as to exactly what they're looking for. So I will not be supporting the motion as it is. I would prefer to have a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Comments made raised a question in my mind. I'm going to turn to Ms. Anderson on this one, if I may. Ms. Anderson, what happens if the motion to waive the requirement to hold a public hearing happens? Is there notification provided in the paper of the bylaw changes? Is there an opportunity for people to write to council? Or is it just essentially, it just comes back and we deal with it in a meeting when it comes forward? Mr. Bowl, sorry, not Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we happen to have a different topic earlier this year that run into similar things. So if there's two notices here, so either for the hearing if it's held, or a notice of not holding a hearing. So if there's no hearing, that's still notice about not having a hearing. The second layer to this, it's a bit more complex, but the business license bylaw itself also requires a notice a little bit later in the process, so that's another notice. So there's going to be two notices no matter what. And then what you could add as council is that public hearing for the zoning bylaw changes. Thank you.
So just for my clarification, so I'm a little confused now. So what is the public hearing for? Is it for all aspects of the business license change, or is it only for the zoning changes that would enable the business license?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe it's only for the zoning bylaw changes technically, but it would be around the same time that we cut our input for the business license bylaw as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, thank you. The public hearing would only be on the zoning bylaw, the changes to the zoning bylaw. The opportunity for input on the business license would be a separate process.
And that process would be notification in the papers, and people could write essentially to council on the topic prior to it coming back to council. Is that the process?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor. It would also provide an opportunity for public input at the council meeting that they're being considered.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think based on that information, if we're providing notification and people can come to the council meeting to provide input and write us, public hearings are an incredibly important piece of our decision-making, and they're an important piece of making it as broad as possible. But to my mind, if we're going to provide a written notification in the paper, I feel like that achieves the same outcome as it coming back to council. So I think, and again, the second half of that would be if I have to manage a meeting, a public hearing in which I have to manage control over discussion only on the topic of the zoning when the primary concerns are about the nuances of the zoning bylaw, I think I'd rather have the notification go out on the zoning bylaw, share that information, and follow that process. I think in this case, I'm supportive of the motion. I think we get more focus and appropriate response to a notification process than we would to a public hearing. So I'm inclined here to support the motion on the floor, which is to waive the public hearing and just follow the regular the other alternate notification process that would still allow for that public input. And the concerns I've heard from other councillors at the table, which I share, I don't want to in any way shut out the opportunity for the Business Improvement Association or local businesses or residents to weigh in, but I'm not hearing that's the issue here. The issue here is really just a more procedural piece of clarity, and I think it's actually more clear to waive the public hearing in this case. So I'll support the motion on the floor. Is there any other further discussion on the motion? The motion live is to waive the requirement for a public hearing. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? I have Councillor Green, Councillor Patterson, and Councillor Braithwaite opposed. That motion does carry. I believe that is all of the items on this. I now, of course, scrolled away from my motion list. Was there any other motions attached to this item? I don't think so. Okay, so this will, we probably don't have an exact timeline yet for when this will come back. There's notifications that have to be done. The bylaws have to be drafted. Are we looking at any estimate?
Likely September.
Likely September, okay. Won't hold you to that, but appreciate the estimate. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, that took longer than I anticipated, but I thought it was a very good debate and discussion in terms of what we got to. So thank you for all of that. We have one last item on the agenda, which is 6.2, a 1587 York Place Heritage Revitalization Agreement. This was a a bylaw that had first, second, and third reading at a prior meeting. This is if I can ask someone to read the adoption motion into the record.
Your worship, I would move that 1587 York Place, 1562 Prospect Place Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4885, 2025, Amendment Bylaw number 4975, 2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. We don't usually do a lot of debate on adoption, but I understand, Councillor Braithwaite. Do you want to just restate your reasons for opposition? Please go ahead.
Yes, I will be opposing the motion as per all of the the reasons, the same as all the prior ones. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Braithwaite opposed. That carries. Any other new business or notices of motion? We will see you all here for our last meeting in July next week. Need a motion to adjourn? Moved. Seconded. Hopefully lots of seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Councillor Braithwaite.